Hey guys, today I'll show you a vampire horror thriller TV series named Vampire Academy. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In the ancient vampire kingdom called Moroi, pure-blood vampires held dominion over the four elemental forces: fire, wind, water, and earth. Their half-human, half-vampire protectors were tasked with shielding them from their eternal enemies, the Strigoi, which are zombie-like creatures born for slaughter. For centuries, the kingdom of Moroi operated under a rigid social hierarchy. Vampires abided by their own arcane rules, and every night followed a strict order until that fateful evening when everything fell apart. The story begins on the 200th birthday of the Vampire Queen. The Moroi kingdom threw a grand celebration, drawing the 12 noble houses from all over the land. Among them was Princess Lissa, accompanied by her childhood friend Rose, a guardian in training. Lissa's godfather, Victor, was one of the Queen's most trusted advisors, and he also attended with his two adopted daughters. However, both the two daughters weren't yet recognized as nobles and held a lower rank in vampire society. As for half-vampire guardians like Rose, they were relegated to security detail. Rose had the privilege of attending the party only because Lissa personally invited her. Lissa's family was one of the Queen's favorites, and the Queen had already declared Lissa's brother the heir apparent. Though a vote was still required, it was expected to be a mere formality. Victor's younger daughter, Sonia, was even engaged to Lissa's brother, making her the future queen, though their union was purely political. Lissa's brother was known for his playboy ways, and during the Queen's birthday, he was busy flirting with a new conquest. That's when the Strigoi attacked. The Guardians rushed to respond, but the purebloods remained blissfully unaware, lost in their revelry. After the party, Lissa, Rose, and their families rode home in high spirits. A bright future lay ahead. Lissa's brother was poised to become king, ushering in a new era for Moroi, and Lissa had planned to appoint Rose as her personal guardian for their upcoming global expedition. But a sudden car crash changed everything. Lissa's brother got killed, and only Lissa and Rose survived the mysterious accident. 3 months later, Lissa returned to the Vampire Academy, having finally regained her composure. Rose, who had already heard the news, skipped class to welcome her, only to be swiftly overpowered by a stranger named Dimitri. The man turned out to be one of the kingdom's most powerful guardians, second only to Rose's mother. He'd been assigned as Lissa's new bodyguard. Though Lissa still intended to choose Rose as her permanent guardian after graduation, neither of them realized how drastically their lives were about to change. Now the sole heir to her family, Lissa, once indifferent to politics, was expected to take on leadership. The Queen summoned Victor to help Lissa gain acceptance from the other noble families. Since Rose would be sent to serve outside the capital after graduation, Lissa was required to perform a formal ritual, reciting an ancient incantation in Old Moroian before all the nobles. It was no small task for someone with no training in the ancient tongue. While practicing in the old cathedral, a young man suddenly appeared. His name was Christian, a noble whose parents had mysteriously chosen to become Strigoi. Because of this, Christian was ostracized, spending most of his time alone in the archives or the library. That day he crossed paths with Lissa. Coincidentally, he was fluent in Old Moroian and began tutoring her. Hormone sparks flew between them immediately. Since only nobles were allowed in the cathedral, Lissa's bodyguard Dimitri had to wait outside. Rose, on her way to class, saw them together and, still sore from earlier, mocked the guard, bragging that she'd soon take his job. But the guard reminded her she'd slipped in rank to 5th place. It turns out, skipping class to pick up Lissa had cost Rose 10 points, enough to fuel her rage and challenge the current top student, Soren, to a duel. Meanwhile, Lissa's succession ceremony began. Nobles and priests gathered to witness it, including Christian. Seeing him there calmed Lissa's nerves, and she successfully completed the ritual. Afterwards came another party, and though Christian typically avoided such events, he showed up. Lissa was thrilled and wanted to thank him properly, but Victor pulled her aside, warning her not to be seen chatting with Christian. Lissa had more noble gatherings to attend and needed to maintain her image. Victor reminded her that duty comes before dreams, a line eerily echoed from her late brother, triggering Lissa's PTSD and leaving her breathless. Strangely, outside, Rose experienced a similar wave of emotion. Distracted, she lost her duel to Soren. The next day, still haunted by trauma, Lissa quietly slipped out of her room and deliberately let the sunlight scorch her skin. As if they shared a psychic bond, Rose found her again. Seeing her friend in low spirits, Rose took her out for a ride to clear her mind. They arrived at the place where they first met, reminiscing about the past and releasing 2 sky lanterns to honor the memory of those they'd lost. From a nearby high ground where he was training, Dimitri spotted the lanterns and immediately sensed something was wrong. After confirming that both Lissa and Rose were missing from their rooms, he rushed out to find them. By then, the sun was already setting. Rose suddenly realized that without Moroi's magical barrier, they were vulnerable to Strigoi attacks. Panic set in. They jumped on their bike and pedaled furiously back, but in their rush, they hit a roadside rock and were forced to continue on foot. Just when they were about to reach the safety of the barrier, they were ambushed by a Strigoi. Rose leapt forward to protect Lissa, but she was no match for the creature and was quickly overpowered. Thankfully, Dimitri arrived just in time and hurled the Strigoi into the magic barrier, neutralizing it. Rose had escaped danger, but the commotion had drawn a crowd. Their secret trip was now exposed. Victor soon arrived to lecture Lissa about her responsibilities and the importance of putting the royal family above personal feelings. Coincidentally, Dimitri also had words for Rose, but it wasn't just a verbal scolding. There were real consequences. Lissa and Rose, who had been living together, were assigned to separate dorms. Rose was now crammed in with other guardians in training, while Lissa moved into a luxurious royal suite. Still, it wasn't all bad. Lissa now had more chances to see Christian, and Rose got to spend more time with Soren. Both girls thought the changes in their lives had reached their peak until the Queen suddenly made a shocking public announcement. Lissa would be her successor. The entire hall fell silent. Even Lissa herself was caught completely off guard. That night, Rose had another strange reaction, followed by a vivid dream. In it, Lissa seemed to be in the middle of a fierce battle. When she saw a corpse, Lissa's deceased brother suddenly appeared, but the dream ended abruptly there. News of Lissa's official selection spread quickly, and preparations for her ascension began. To help Lissa understand the lineage of the 12 noble houses, Victor appointed his younger daughter, Sonia, as Lissa's close aide. Of course, Victor had his own agenda. Since Sonia was no longer engaged to the royal heir and thus stripped of her future queen status, Victor, knowing both his adopted daughter's political ambition and the queen's high expectations for Lissa, saw this as a way to keep his family close to power. As the chosen successor, Lissa first had to complete a ritual to reveal her elemental affinity. Unlike the queen, who was a wind mage, members of Lissa's family were usually attuned to fire. It should have been a simple matter, but Lissa was deeply uneasy. Meanwhile, Christian was attending a biology lecture about Strigoi. The teacher explained that they had excellent night vision but lacked individual consciousness. Christian raised a skeptical question, prompting a snide comment from a royal-born student named Jesse. Jesse intentionally brought up the origins of Strigoi to provoke Christian, reminding the class that vampires who drain a human to death, like Christian's parents allegedly did, could also turn into Strigoi. Elsewhere, Rose faced even harsher punishment. She was assigned double chores and summoned for a formal disciplinary hearing led by the headmaster. Worst of all, she was now forbidden from seeing Lissa. To ensure this rule was enforced, the guardian leader assigned Dimitri to keep an even closer watch on her. But Lissa didn't want to see Rose. She wanted to see Christian. Though she had mastered a few minor spells, Lissa had never demonstrated any particular magical talent. The last person to fail their elemental awakening ritual was Victor's older daughter, Mia. Not even the high priestess could help her. Eventually, she was subjected to electrotherapy and only recovered after a long rehabilitation. To this day, Mia, still without any elemental gift, spends her days communicating with birds. Desperate to avoid the same fate, Lissa begged Christian to help her uncover her true affinity. But even with his guidance, she failed to connect with fire, wind, water, or earth. As Lissa's emotions surged, Rose, who was in the middle of a combat training session, once again experienced a psychic connection, triggering an impressive burst of power. Seeing this potential, Dimitri began giving Rose special training. That evening, Rose's disciplinary trial officially began. This time, brute force wouldn't solve anything. With no other choice, she defended herself by presenting her stellar academic record and long-standing friendship with Lissa, arguing that she was more than capable of becoming an excellent guardian. Meanwhile, Lissa was growing increasingly anxious about her upcoming magical affinity ceremony. Rose instantly sensed her panic and, without hesitation, abandoned the tribunal to find her. Dimitri, recognizing the urgency, quietly allowed her to pass. Lissa finally opened up. She admitted that while she never cared much about politics, her brother's grand vision for reforming the Moroi world needed someone to carry it forward. If the crown were seized by a selfish or corrupt royal, the entire realm would suffer. Hearing this, Rose immediately voiced her support, encouraging Lissa to follow her heart. Empowered by Rose's words, Lissa gathered her courage and walked into the ceremonial hall. At that moment, Moroi citizens across the nation were watching the event unfold, eager to witness the unveiling of their future queen's magical affinity. The ceremony was being broadcast live nationwide, yet Lissa, as before, failed to spark a reaction from any of the four elements. A A heavy silence settled over the crowd. Christian, watching from the audience, turned and quietly walked away. Desperate, Lissa made one final attempt, and this time fire answered her call. The crowd erupted in cheers, elated that she had perfectly inherited her family's elemental gift. Both the Queen and Victor were visibly pleased. But when Lissa glanced around, she realized it was Christian who had covertly helped her. Instead of feeling triumphant, she was burdened with guilt, believing she had deceived her people. Dimitri then reminded her there was something else that needed her attention. It turned out Rose was now facing expulsion for abandoning her trial midway. Knowing there was nothing more she could do, Rose went out drinking with classmates, Soren and May, blowing off steam in a bar. This time, Lissa's authority came into play. Under pressure from the future queen, the headmaster had no choice but to reduce Rose's punishment to probation. Still, Lissa couldn't shake the unease over her affinity. She confronted Christian, telling him she didn't want anyone to interfere on her behalf again. Christian, however, told her she possessed a rare and powerful kind of magic. By this point, the bond between them had grown undeniable, and that moment became the turning point. They sealed their feelings with a smelly kiss. At that very instant, Rose once again felt the psychic connection so intensely that she fainted, collapsing into the arms of the ever-watchful Dimitri. Childhood friend Soren could only stand there, heartbroken, as he watched Dimitri carry her heavy body away. Meanwhile, even Mia, who had never shown any magical affinity, had someone who cherished her. The biology teacher, who never thought she was strange, had fallen deeply in love with her. Together, they studied Strigoi and made a startling discovery that recent attacks followed a distinct pattern, as if the Strigoi were testing the Academy's defenses. It seemed Christian's theory was correct. Strigoi were developing independent thought. The next day, Lissa visited Rose, bringing good news. Her punishment had been downgraded to a warning. Overjoyed, Rose shared the secret of her psychic bond with Lissa. Lissa was stunned, wondering if this could be the unique magic Christian had mentioned. The scene shifts to another part of the Moroi kingdom, where the reckless royal heir Jesse ignored his guardian's warnings and insisted on leaving the local vampire academy for a joyride. When he returned, the gatekeeper was nowhere to be found. Impatient, Jesse got out of the car and called out, only to attract a lurking Strigoi. As he rushed back to his car, the creature lunged at the hood. With no choice, Jesse drove straight through the magic barrier, incinerating the Strigoi in the process. But as soon as it died, a whole swarm of Strigoi scaled the nearby wall and began pouring into the academy. A battle was now inevitable. At the same time, St. Jude Academy was overrun with corpses, as Guardians and Strigoi clashed in a brutal battle. The Guardians ultimately managed to defend the school, but only at a devastating cost. News of the carnage at St. Jude spread quickly, plunging the Moroi world into panic. The number of surviving Guardians, already worryingly low, dropped even further. At the memorial service, the High Priestess not only announced a traditional night vigil for the dead, but also called on Moroi citizens to fulfill their reproductive duties to ensure the birth of more Guardians. Christian, mourning in solitude inside a small chapel, was hit especially hard. The fallen school was his alma mater, and his roommate had died in the attack. Lissa came to see him, intending to talk about Rose's empathic link. Unbeknownst to her, Sonia had secretly followed and overheard everything. Shocked to learn Lissa and Christian had kissed, Sonia rushed to report it to Victor. Forced into a corner, Lissa ordered Sonia to keep it secret. As they argued, a golden light suddenly flared from Lissa's tongue. Sonia's expression glazed over, and she immediately promised not to speak of it again. Christian, watching closely, was lost in thought. Elsewhere, Rose was stunned when her mother, famously the strongest guardian alive, arrived at the academy to train the students. But Rose felt no joy. Years ago, her mother had abandoned her as an infant at the academy gates, choosing her duty as a guardian over motherhood. Rose had never forgiven her and refused to engage in any meaningful conversation. The next day, a group of Dhampir women, half human, half vampire, arrived at the Queen's request to offer their services to Moroi in need. One of them happened to be an old acquaintance of Dimitri, and Rose stumbled upon the two of them embracing, her heart suddenly burning with jealousy. Later, both Rose's mother and Dimitri joined in leading combat training. Naturally, her mother focused on Rose, but Rose was openly defiant, demanding they fight one-on-one. It didn't last long. She was quickly taken down. Still, she refused to ask for guidance. Dimitri, sensing something deeper, approached her for a heart-to-heart. Meanwhile, after reviewing Mia and the teacher's report, Victor recommended to the council that the academy's magic barriers be reinforced. However, since the enhancement ritual required a high monk from a distant land, Victor's political rival proposed a different solution, unleashing the Houndseekers. These magically bound war dogs obey only the Moroi and can detect and destroy Strigoi with deadly precision, but they're dangerously uncontrollable. The last time they were deployed, they wiped out a whole village outside the academy. Yet with no better option, the council approved their release. That same evening, the night vigil for the dead was scheduled. But as it was traditionally reserved for royals, Sonia wasn't allowed to attend with Lissa. Disillusioned by this class divide, Lissa took a bold stand during a live interview calling for the vigil to be open to all Moroi, regardless of status. Surprisingly, the queen didn't reprimand her. Instead, she announced that the ceremony would indeed be open to everyone. During training, Rose's mother tried to explain herself. As a Dhampir woman, she only had 3 options in life: serve as a guardian, be sent to breeding communes to bear children for the Moroi, or become a blood courtesan. Degenerate royals like Jesse were obsessed with chasing blood courtesans through the streets. His father, disgusted by Jesse's habits, was now forcing him to settle down with a proper commune woman. Rose's mother had desperately wanted her daughter to avoid such a fate, which was why she had pushed her so hard. Unfortunately, Rose wasn't interested in hearing excuses. Before long, Christian approached Rose with a theory. From an ancient text, he had discovered a rare form of magic capable of controlling a vampire's mind. He believed Lissa possessed this very ability. According to his research, only one book described this power in detail, and it was locked away in the High Priestess's archives. Christian proposed they sneak in that night while everyone was distracted by the night vigil. At this point, the night vigil for the dead was in full swing, with everyone donning masks and entering the ceremonial hall. As Lissa listened to the murmurs around her, most of them criticizing her for overstepping royal boundaries in her earlier speech, anxiety crept in. The moment the queen arrived, Lissa rushed to apologize. To her surprise, the queen waved it off, encouraging Lissa to relax. But despite her calm demeanor, the queen still clung to the old hierarchical system. As soon as Lissa walked away, the queen quietly instructed Victor to bar all non-royals from entering the palace. Elsewhere, the Guardians, led by Rose's mother, held their own solemn tribute for those who had fallen at St. Jude's. Soon they gave way to a night of revelry. But just as the festivities began, a teacher pulled Rose's mother aside with 2 shocking pieces of news. First, the magical barrier at St. Jude's had been disabled from the inside, meaning there was a traitor within the academy. Second, and even more startling, during the attack, 2 Strigoi had entered Christian's former dorm. They were none other than Christian's parents. Christian, who had believed them long dead, was shaken to the core all the way to his smelly butt. Even so, he had a mission to complete first, sneaking into the High Priestess's archives with Rose to steal a forbidden book. On the way, Christian confided in her. Just the day before the attack, he'd been skiing with his parents, the 3 of them happy and carefree. But the next morning, his mom and dad abandoned him and joined the Strigoi. Now, after leading the massacre at St. Jude's, they'd come looking for him. Christian couldn't make sense of it. Before he could process more, they found the ancient book. Just then, a palace guard heard a noise and started heading their way. Rose grabbed Christian and made a quick escape, only to run straight into her mother. One look was all it took for her mother to realize what had happened. Furious, she warned Rose that sneaking into the archives was a serious offense, one that could see her sent to the breeding communes. And if she violated reproductive laws, not even Lissa as queen could save her. But Rose, as always, refused to back down. It wasn't until Dimitri stepped in with his own story that she finally paused to listen. He had once been just like her, assigned to protect a royal friend. His friend had always told him to keep personal feelings separate from duty. One day, during a rare break, Dimitri was away when the prince's convoy was ambushed by Strigoi. The prince was killed. Just that day, Dimitri had seen the prince's widow working at the commune. She'd ended up there after losing her husband. Rose finally understood the message and asked Dimitri to train her sexy body. Back at his dorm, Christian returned to a chilling surprise. It's a small box on his bed. Inside was his roommate's jawbone. The horror left him speechless. After collecting himself, he went to Lissa and revealed what he'd learned. Her gift was a rare and powerful form of psychic control. Knowing Lissa was destined for greater things, he told her she shouldn't let herself get distracted by romantic feelings. Then he said goodbye. But the troubles didn't stop there. The queen received grim news. 2 of Lissa's distant cousins had been confirmed dead in the St. Jude attack. Now, Lissa was the sole surviving member of her family, and by an old Moroi law, any family with too few members would lose their council voting rights, meaning Lissa also lost her claim to the throne. The person who uncovered this law was none other than Tatiana, the High Priestess's ambitious niece, and the same woman who had a brief fling with Lissa's brother before his death. Clearly, she had political ambitions of her own. To make matters worse, the Hound Seekers suddenly went rogue and attacked the monk who had arrived to strengthen the Academy's barriers. The Queen immediately ordered Victor to have them caged. Victor, suspecting foul play, didn't even have time to begin his investigation. He suddenly collapsed. Mia, thinking Victor had died, called his partner in a panic. But by the time his partner arrived, Victor had already regained consciousness. He barely rested before heading straight to a royal council meeting. With Lissa now stripped of royal privilege, she buried herself in the book Christian had stolen. Meanwhile, Tatiana formally announced her candidacy for queen. Jesse's father, an open political opponent of Victor, was clearly in her camp. As soon as she left, the two proposed lowering the eligible age for guardian conscription to 16. Despite Victor's best efforts to oppose it, Lissa's family now had no vote, and the measure passed 6-5. Following the decision, instructors began administering combat tests to all trainee guardians. Each student would be assigned to protect a royal for the next 24 hours, while instructors, posing as Strigoi, would simulate ambushes. But the pairings caught everyone off guard. Rose was assigned to protect Jesse, Soren got Christian, and Lissa's protector was a total nobody. Later, Victor approached Lissa with a proposal. She could regain her family's political power by marrying into another noble line. But Moroi marriages had to preserve bloodlines, meaning she could only choose from 4 men with distant ties to her house, including Jesse. Jesse's father, eager to elevate the family's status, ordered his son to clean up his act and sent guards to block him from visiting any blood brothels. With no choice, Jesse went to meet Lissa. Luckily, the two knew each other well and had absolutely no romantic interest. Silently, they agreed to play along and make the arrangement look good, but nothing more. Strangely, a group of royals suddenly showed up together, glancing at each other in confusion. That's when Rose had a sudden realization. This was a test. Sure enough, their instructor and Dimitri descended from above. Thinking fast, Rose ordered the royals to retreat and threw herself into a fight with the attackers. In the end, both Rose and Soren made it through the trial. As everyone cheered, even Jesse joined in, clapping from the sidelines. That's when Rose noticed he hadn't left with the others. He'd been standing there watching the whole time like it was a show. Furious, she snapped at him. Jesse, of course, immediately went to complain to the instructor, earning Rose a scolding. Meanwhile, Tatiana had quietly maneuvered herself into becoming her family's new spokesperson. Trying to block a proposal from his political rivals, Victor introduced a countermeasure. Guardians would no longer be assigned to protect non-royal Moroi. That meant his own partner would no longer receive protection either, a heavy but calculated move. Elsewhere, Christian received a mysterious ski pass marked with a time and place. Soren was confused, but Christian knew exactly what it meant, that his parents wanted to meet him. Hoping to sneak off campus, Christian turned to Jesse for help. Jesse agreed, but on one condition. He wanted Christian to smuggle a blood courtesan out of the academy for him. Christian agreed, and Jesse dropped him off at the meeting spot. Meanwhile, Rose tracked down Soren to ask where Christian had gone. After comparing notes, they realized something was very wrong. Fearing the worst, Soren rushed off toward the meeting location despite Rose's protests, leaving her no choice but to notify Dimitri. By then, Christian had already reunited with his mother. She told him that she and his father had become Strigoi for reasons he couldn't yet understand. But before she could explain further, Soren's voice rang out from outside. Christian's mother quickly hid, and Christian went out to meet Soren, only to be ambushed by a Strigoi. The attack nearly killed Soren. Just in time, Dimitri and the instructor arrived, capturing the Strigoi alive. But much like what happened with Lissa and Rose, Christian, being royal, got off with a verbal warning. Soren, however, was banned from participating in future tests. Furious and humiliated, he lashed out at Rose, blaming her for everything. Meanwhile, Christian returned to his dorm to some unexpectedly good news. While researching the ancient book, Lissa discovered that her true gift was soul magic. Using it, she mentally influenced a bookstore owner to unearth a forbidden tome on spirit energy. She learned that gifted individuals like herself and Mia possess more than just psychic control. They have the power to resurrect the dead. But such powerful magic comes with a cost. Soul power is deeply entwined with darkness, and those who wield it must pay a steep price. At the Moroi Council, a new proposal was under debate. Given that a Strigoi had just been captured alive, the leaders now wanted the trainee guardians to confront Strigoi directly, a new dangerous test to prove their combat abilities. The instructor then selected 5 top-performing students for a wilderness training mission. According to the plan, one student would play the role of a royal, while the others had to escort them to a designated location before nightfall and then set up a defensive position. Once night came, Team B would launch a surprise attack. The goal was to avoid having their blood vessel simulators blown up. Only then would the mission be considered a success. Rose was assigned team captain and led the group to the target location without issue. However, the terrain made it a perfect ambush site. Consulting the map, Rose found a nearby elevated structure and moved the group there for better defense and visibility. Cleverly, she also had everyone remove their neck devices. If they weren't wearing them, they couldn't be killed. What they didn't know was that something had gone horribly wrong elsewhere. The worker assigned to release the Strigoi at the training site had been attacked and turned. Now, 2 Strigoi were waiting for nightfall to begin their slaughter. Meanwhile, Victor had just returned from seeing the doctor, knowing full well his time was limited. When he heard about the council's reckless training decision, he rushed to demand it be called off. Aside from a few allies, no one supported him. Desperate, Victor turned to the head instructor and Dimitri. Dimitri immediately wanted to pull the trainees back, but the head instructor insisted on following orders from the council. With no other option, Victor appealed to the queen. She refused, unwilling to trigger a political crisis. Elsewhere, Lissa had become obsessed with a legendary Moroi who once mastered spirit magic, but there was no further information, only a painting to stare at. Then Tatiana appeared, claiming to know the artist, but Lissa would have to join the royal tour to meet him. Not only that, Tatiana conveniently leaked the location of the training exercise. Alarmed, Lissa asked Christian for help. The two then recruited Sonia and Soren and convinced Jesse to drive them all to the training site. Victor quickly learned of their escape and once again begged the queen to halt the exercise. Back at the site, the teacher arrived to check in on both teams. He had no idea real Strigoi were present. When he reached Team B's location, he discovered they'd already been attacked. Before he could react, the Strigoi struck again, ambushing from behind. Caught completely off guard, the teacher was bitten and turned on the spot. Luckily, Lissa and her crew arrived just in time. After a quick debrief, Rose realized the situation was spiraling and immediately called for evacuation. Elsewhere, May spotted Sonia and rushed over to chat. Jesse, getting impatient, decided to leave. When May took his keys to stop him, Jesse threatened to drain her blood. Sonia retaliated, casting a spell that left Jesse gasping for air, a firm lesson in boundaries. But the newly turned teacher had already arrived. Christian delayed him using his fire abilities, but his energy was limited. In a critical moment, Rose told the others to run while she stayed behind to face the Strigoi. Just in time, Dimitri arrived to assist. In a fierce battle, Rose drove her dagger straight into the teacher's chest, ending his teaching life herself. Lissa then stepped up, using her spirit magic to heal the wounded trainees. Afterward, she casually healed Rose's superficial injuries too. She confided in Rose that she needed to learn more about spirit magic, and the only way was to join the royal tour. That meant marrying Jesse to go with his family. But Lissa's heart still belonged to Christian. Before her wedding, she and Christian shared one last night together. Back at the academy, Mia was devastated by the news of the teacher's death. Knowing her father didn't have long left either, she used her spirit power to forcibly heal Victor. Rejuvenated, Victor made a dramatic comeback, announcing his candidacy for Moroi King. Unbeknownst to him, a despairing Mia was about to make a tragic choice. Fortunately, the bird she cared for swooped in and saved her in the nick of time. As for Rose, after personally slaying a Strigoi, she easily secured her spot on the royal tour and was honored with the Guardian's highest accolade, the Blood Seal. But guilt over killing her teacher overwhelmed her. During the award ceremony, she fled the stage in tears, leaving the crowd stunned in awkward silence. Upon hearing the news, Lissa rushed to comfort Rose. But truthfully, her top priority was still the royal tour, specifically meeting the reclusive art collector. Originally, Sonia was supposed to accompany Victor on the tour, but an unexpected development changed everything. Due to her previous attack on Jesse, she was summoned by the church for disciplinary action. That left Mia to accompany their father instead. After receiving her punishment, Sonia went to Christian for help. It turned out she had nearly suffocated Jesse because she'd lost control of her magical energy. Now she needed Christian to help her learn to control her powers. Before long, the royal tour officially began. The royals set off to visit each of the Moroi provinces. Coincidentally, the successor election was also underway, turning the tour into a full-blown campaign trail. Everyone had their own hidden agenda. After hearing that the art collector had a weakness for parties, Lissa asked Jesse's father for help securing an invitation. Meanwhile, Mia discovered she had suddenly developed the ability to hear people's thoughts, an unsettling but useful talent. Through this, Victor learned of the tensions between Jesse and his father. Tatiana was also busy, campaigning and pulling strings. One of Rose's classmates tipped her off that Tatiana had been secretly meeting with Soren's father. The two were disturbingly like-minded. Soren's father planned to move royal family members out of villages that had lost their guardians and into relocation centers so he could profit handsomely. When Rose found out that one of those villages was her late teacher's hometown, she immediately volunteered for the mission. Coincidentally, the operation's commanding officer turned out to be Dimitri. Back at the royal banquet, Jesse spotted the blood courtesan again, now appearing as his father's new business partner's date. Jealousy bubbled up instantly. When Jesse's father caught wind of his continued involvement with her, he exploded in fury and tore into Jesse, who in turn lashed out at the Guardians, demanding they escort him and Lissa away immediately. Elsewhere, the head instructor had brought Rose to her late teacher's family home. His younger sister, also a guardian, greeted her coldly. Rose apologized to the teacher's father, but the family turned out to be understanding and even tried to comfort her. It was then revealed that the teacher's sister had actually deserted her post to protect their father. The head instructor had been sent to take her into custody for a council trial. Upon hearing this, Rose was furious, but before she could react further, she suddenly sensed Lissa was in danger. It turned out Lissa's group had run into a Strigoi trap along the way, forcing the Guardians to fight tooth and nail. May was injured during the battle, and before Lissa could heal her, she was whisked away by reinforcements. Disillusioned by Jesse's behavior, Lissa refused to talk about the wedding and used her powers to literally blast Jesse away. Just then, Jesse's father handed her the coveted party invite from the art collector, finally giving Lissa something worthwhile to pursue. When Jesse's father found out what had happened, he was furious and gave Jesse a brutal beating. Soon after, Sonia heard that May had been injured and rushed to her side. Thankfully, May wasn't seriously hurt. Seeing the two so close, Christian politely excused himself, unwilling to third-wheel their affectionate moment. Meanwhile, Tatiana approached Mia and shamelessly insulted the late teacher, then had the audacity to attack Victor verbally right in front of her. Overwhelmed with rage and grief, Mia nearly struck her down on the spot. She was held back just in time, but Tatiana seized the moment and began spreading rumors that Mia was losing control. Back in the village, Rose learned that the teacher's father would likely pass away that night. She volunteered to take the sister's place on watch duty so she could be with her father one last time. Sure enough, the village, now unguarded, was attacked by Strigoi that night. Rose and Dimitri fought side by side. When the father passed away, the sister rejoined the battle and the three of them managed to wipe out the attackers. Grateful and impressed, the sister finally accepted Rose. By the time Soren's father arrived with his team the next morning, she had already fled. Rose and Dimitri covered for her, claiming she had died in the fight. The deception worked. Afterward, Dimitri marked Rose with the blood seal, and the two finally confirmed their relationship. Elsewhere, Lissa finally met the art collector in person and asked to view his private collection, but the eccentric collector was extremely possessive and flatly refused. Lissa had no choice but to use her spirit powers to force his hand. Reluctantly, he led her into his private gallery where the paintings were truly extraordinary. One painting in particular showed a legendary figure entering people's dreams. It left Lissa stunned. He explained it was only a fragment of a larger altar decoration, and even he hadn't found all its parts. After the viewing, the art collector offered Lissa a drink. She naively downed the powerful cocktail in one go and promptly passed out. When she came to, she found herself beside the art collector by a swimming pool, only to realize she was still dreaming. The art collector revealed he too was a spirit user and had the rare ability to enter dreams. At last, Lissa had found someone who could truly teach her how to harness her powers. To that end, she appointed Rose and Dimitri as her guardians and planned to leave the vampire kingdom with them and the art collector. It turned out that a renowned scholar, an expert in legendary figures, had once written a controversial article accusing the Vampire Academy of deliberately covering up parts of those legends. This angered the church, forcing the scholar to relocate to the human world. However, the art collector didn't actually know where the scholar lived. Fortunately, he had connections who might, but they could only be found in a nightclub. And so, the four vampires ventured into the wild nightlife. Rose and Lissa were dazzled by the lights and music, while only Dimitri remained alert, scanning the crowd for signs of Strigoi. Rose wasn't too worried. After all, she always sensed when Lissa was in danger or when Strigoi were nearby. So when Lissa and the art collector slipped into the VIP area for intel, Rose pulled Dimitri onto the dance floor to dance their hormones away. But soon enough, Rose felt something something was off, right as Lissa and the art collector re-emerged. The group quickly left the club, and as they departed, Rose brushed past a Strigoi in the crowd, confirming her suspicions. After escaping, the group successfully located the scholar. She only allowed Lissa inside after learning she could manipulate minds. The Guardians, however, were made to wait outside. Dmitri found this odd, prompting Rose to finally explain the nature of spirit magic to him. Inside, the scholar shared the real story behind the legendary figure. Apparently, upon discovering that using spirit power came with harmful side effects, he linked his soul to his guardian to offload the damage. Lissa was stunned and deeply disappointed. She had never imagined that the so-called hero would resort to such a lowly tactic to avoid consequences. Before they could process this revelation, Rose and Dmitri burst in, saying that Strigoi were attacking. For safety, the scholar and the two royals were sent to hide in the back room, while Rose and Dmitri stood their ground. Just as the fight seemed under control, one Strigoi circled around to ambush them. Lissa panicked and shouted for Rose, but Rose hesitated, torn between helping Lissa and protecting Dmitri. When she saw that the Strigoi was just a child, she froze, unable to strike. The scholar had no choice but to step in and finish the Strigoi off. Once the chaos had settled, Rose realized the Strigoi she'd just fought was the same person she had seen at the nightclub. Confused and disturbed, she looked to the scholar, who was now visibly irritated by the disruption to her quiet life. In a moment of spite, the scholar revealed the entire truth to Lissa, leaving her pale and devastated. Meanwhile, after Mia's outburst the night before, Victor, who was running for the kingdom's new ruler, approached the queen to gauge her stance. She admitted she didn't want Tatiana on the throne either. If Victor could win over the three key family representatives, he'd have her support. With time running out, Victor raced to meet each one. Luckily, his efforts paid off, and he secured all 3 votes, but the endeavor left him completely drained. Back home, Mia, seeing her father exhausted, used her spirit powers once again to heal him. Meanwhile, Tatiana wasn't sitting idle. Upon learning of Victor's lobbying, she sent the High Priestess to pressure the Queen. Normally, the priests, masters of elemental forces and members of the church, stayed out of politics. But the High Priestess, swayed by her niece's ambitions, agreed to intervene and warned the Queen that the church would not support Victor's claim. Cornered, the Queen had to abandon her plan to back Victor. But she quickly came up with a workaround. At the next royal gathering, she announced that since neither Victor nor Tatiana had a clear majority, they would undergo an ancient royal trial. Each candidate would face a test of elemental power. The winner would ascend to the throne. Victor, having finally regained some confidence, returned home, only to find a dead body on the floor. Unbeknownst to him, Mia had been slowly losing control due to a backlash of dark energy. As a royal, she had access to exclusive blood supplies, so she ordered a delivery and drained the courier dry. This meant only one thing: Mia had turned into a Strigoi. Victor, fully aware of what this meant, chose to bury the truth for now. Victor soon faced his first test, joining Tatiana for the Elemental Endurance Challenge. However, due to his age and declining health, he was quickly defeated by Tatiana. Realizing he was becoming a distraction for Rose Dmitri, in an effort to allow her to focus more on her duties as a protector, made the difficult decision to break up with her. Heartbroken, Rose turned to Lissa for comfort, only to receive another devastating blow. Lissa asked her to stop being her protector. Rose couldn't accept this and demanded an explanation. Left with no choice, Lissa reluctantly revealed the truth. The scholar had told her the previous night that legendary figures build soul links by resurrecting their protectors. In reality, Rose hadn't survived the car accident that night. It was Lissa who had used her energy to bring her back to life, thus creating the bond between them. Now, Lissa didn't want Rose to bear the darkness any longer and decided they should part ways for now. The series of blows sent Rose into a spiral, and she resorted to alcohol to numb the pain. But in her haze, she began to experience hallucinations. Fortunately, just in time, Soren appeared and took her back to the dorm. Meanwhile, Dmitri had stayed up all night, quietly waiting in the church. Tatiana happened to be there as well and struck up a conversation with him. At the same time, Christian was training with May, practicing quick spells. May had heard that Sonia had been accompanying his father for his election campaign, and she was somewhat dissatisfied with this. Just then, Lissa arrived, prompting May to gracefully excuse herself. Lissa had brought Christian some incredible news. She had just learned that Christian was also of Lissa's family bloodline, which meant that Lissa could marry him to restore her voting rights. The two quickly began preparing for the engagement. According to vampire tradition, they had to first conduct the blood marking ceremony with a monk as a witness, exchange gifts, and then announce their engagement to the entire royal family. What was initially just a formality took an unexpected turn when Christian received startling news. It turned out that the Guardians, while reviewing their previous battle with the Strigoi, had discovered that the Strigoi had attacked Lissa twice with intent, under the leadership of Christian's parents. An earlier massacre had prevented Lissa from ascending the throne, sparking suspicion that there might be a conspiracy within the royal family to eliminate her. Furthermore, the truth behind the car accident that killed Lissa's family remained unsolved. After much discussion, suspicion fell on Jesse. Christian, enraged, went to confront him, but Jesse denied any involvement in politics, claiming to be nothing more than a playboy. Christian found some truth in his words, leaving him confused. Elsewhere, the second round of trials was about to begin, and Victor and Tatiana needed to choose a protector to fight on their behalf. Rose approached Dmitri at this time, asking him to investigate the Strigoi, but he remained firm in his priority to protect Rose and kept his promise to Tatiana to participate in the competition. Rose, upon hearing this, went straight to Victor and knocked out the fighter he had chosen, insisting that she take his place. That evening, the arena was set up, and word spread that there would be a free fight to watch. Naturally, the crowds flocked to witness the spectacle. Both major and minor royals lined up to enter, eager to see the show. Christian, who hadn't had the chance to tell Lissa about the Strigoi, was just about to step into the ring with her. The moment the royal audience heard that Lissa had chosen Christian as her fiancé, they were left speechless. Soon the match began. Dmitri was completely unprepared to face Rose, and for a moment he was unsure of how to proceed. Rose, on the other hand, intended to use this opportunity to show Dmitri how the unfair system was unworthy of his blind loyalty. She attacked fiercely from the start. Though Dmitri could have easily knocked Rose out with a single punch, he couldn't bring himself to hurt her. In the end, he chose to stop resisting and took Rose's spinning kick head-on, getting knocked out on the spot. With this, Victor managed to score a victory, but Rose didn't feel the joy of winning. She knew Dmitri was faking the fight. Furious, she punched him twice more, but he still didn't fight back, leaving the audience confused and unsure of how to react. After the match, Soren took Rose to see Lissa to revisit the memories of the night of the car accident. Initially resistant, Rose eventually agreed for the greater good, and with the help of some medication, they returned to the scene of the crash. Everything unfolded just as the scholar had described. Lissa, heartbroken to learn the truth about Rose's origin, had tried to resurrect her and then passed out due to exhaustion. Not long after, Christian's parents arrived at the scene, confirming that they were indeed involved in the accident. The third round of the trials began with the Queen asking Victor and Tatiana what qualities a ruler should have. She then instructed them to take magical pills that would induce a trance, and the first to provide the correct answer would win. In the illusion, Victor found himself in a scene where he was raising two daughters. He suddenly had an epiphany and pointed out that while a royal should prioritize their family, a ruler must put the interests of the kingdom first and be ready to sacrifice everything for it. His answer was undoubtedly perfect, allowing him to turn the tables and claim the throne. As the outcome was settled, Tatiana returned from the trance to reality, visibly upset about losing the election. Dmitri came to apologize for their earlier defeat. Tatiana, however, had already seen through everything. She knew Dmitri had conceded for love and admitted that she too had experienced unrequited love. At that moment, the two locked eyes, feeling a deep connection. Meanwhile, Rose, who had been revisiting the memories of the car accident, felt a deep sadness that she could never return to the happier days of the past. Despondent, she decided to leave the capital, and Soren chose to accompany her. At the same time, Christian finally discovered the true traitor. It turned out that the royal family had an exclusive restaurant, and both Lissa and Christian had visited an elderly woman there. Christian considered her a close friend, and she had always supported their relationship. This meant that the elderly woman had been involved from the beginning. Given her freedom of movement and ability to communicate with the outside world, Christian finally realized something was wrong. Lissa also revealed to him that his parents had been present at the scene of the car accident. Christian understood now. If he stayed with Lissa, his parents would eventually find her, and once again, they might be forced to part ways. The scene shifted to the new ruler, Victor, who was preparing to receive congratulations from others. As per tradition, Tatiana, as the defeated candidate, was expected to present a gift, but Tatiana wasn't about to give up so easily. She had somehow captured Mia, who had turned into a Strigoi, and brought her to the scene, presenting her as a gift to Victor. Before Before Victor had even settled into his throne, he was faced with his first political crisis. Now, Tatiana wasted no time, quickly delivering a speech accusing Victor of concealing his health problems and covering up for his Strigoi daughter. She stirred the crowd, calling for them to choose her as the next ruler. Victor, on the other hand, could only hold his ground, trying to find a way to resolve the crisis. After all, if he was forced to abdicate, Mia's life would likely be in danger. But if that happened, the entire vampire kingdom would fall into chaos. Sonia knew that without Mia's help, their father's health could not withstand the pressure. She turned to Lissa to cry out for help. Lissa, seeing Sonia in tears, felt sympathy and decided to visit Victor. Meanwhile, Tatiana went to persuade the queen, suggesting that the council could overturn the results of the previous trial and declare her the winner. Her words carried a clear hint of a coup. The high priestess, unable to tolerate it any longer, publicly declared that the choice of elemental power belonged to Victor. The church firmly supported this decision. Meanwhile, Rose was preparing to leave with Soren, seeking to live in the human world. In contrast, Dimitri's fate was much grimmer. He was arrested on the spot for treason. It turned out that the higher-ups of the Guardians had noticed some irregularities in his previous assignments and had taken him in for questioning. Dimitri maintained his innocence, but with the teacher's sister already captured, it was only a matter of time before he too would face punishment. Soon, Rose found Dimitri, who was under house arrest. She knew that it was her fault for letting the teacher's sister go, which had led to Dimitri's current predicament. She couldn't help but feel guilty. Dimitri, however, didn't mind at all. They both knew this might be their last meeting, and yet there were many things left unsaid. As Rose left Dimitri's room, she was seen by May. May knew the two were still emotionally tied to each other, while Soren had already made up his mind to let go of everything and go wild with Rose. So May tried to convince Soren not to be foolish, even telling him outright that Rose didn't love him. Unfortunately, Soren didn't listen to her. Still, her words did have an effect on him. Just then, Dimitri was about to be taken to prison to await the queen's judgment. Soren went to inform Dimitri that he planned to run away with Rose. Dimitri wasn't surprised. Instead, he reminded Soren not to tell Rose about his imprisonment, or she would never leave. Furious, Soren angrily shouted at him. Meanwhile, Lissa arrived at the Victor family's residence and saw firsthand Victor's frail condition. She realized Sonia had not been lying. Without hesitation, she revealed the truth about her spiritual powers, explaining that Mia had lost his sanity due to side effects. She admitted that Victor should never have learned about Lissa's powers, and when he did, he immediately begged her to heal him. Lissa now understood that Mia had fallen into darkness after Victor had attempted to treat him. Victor, desperate, pleaded with Lissa to help him, promising to protect the users of spiritual power once he survived the coronation ceremony. To Victor's surprise, Lissa didn't hesitate to help him, but explained that she was suppressing her powers through medication. Hearing this, Victor immediately ordered that Lissa be locked in a room to wait until the effects of the medicine wore off. After some time, Lissa's powers returned. At that moment, her brother's ghost appeared and reminded her that she didn't have to run from her own powers and that she must take responsibility for them. As he finished speaking, Victor walked in. Rose, who had been writing a farewell letter to Lissa, also saw Lissa's predicament through their connection. She rushed to the Victor residence, but was subdued by Victor's guards before she could get far. Seeing Rose in danger, Lissa, in a fit of rage, transferred all of her spiritual power to Victor, causing both of them to faint. Luckily, Lissa regained consciousness soon after and was shocked to discover that she could now see both the spiritual light and darkness on Rose. It turned out that Lissa hadn't been transferring darkness to Rose, but instead, through their connection, had been siphoning Rose's spiritual light. But now, that didn't matter anymore. Rose told Lissa that she was about to leave, and Lissa, knowing this was a dream they once shared, didn't stop her. Instead, she wished Rose a better life. So, Rose and Soren packed their bags and, under the cover of night, secretly left the Vampire Academy. Lissa then went to the Queen, declaring that she was ready to inherit the throne. The Queen was overjoyed and immediately annulled the previous trials, officially naming Lissa as her successor. On the other side, Christian confronted the elderly woman who had been the mole, demanding the truth. The woman confessed that Christian's parents did indeed want to overthrow Lissa's family, but they still loved Christian and hoped to see him again. This revelation caused Christian to waver, and he agreed to meet them. But not long after, Christian received a note informing him of a change in plans. The second note made him feel a sense of urgency, and he rushed to report to the head instructor. It turned out that his parents had kidnapped Sonia as a hostage. Christian pointed out that the Strigoi wanted to negotiate an exchange for Mia, but the instructor believed the Strigoi didn't have the intellect for such high-level tactics. Even if the situation were true, it was certainly a trap. However, concerned about Sonia's safety and convinced by Christian's persistence, the instructor finally agreed to bring along a monk and lead a team to meet with Christian's parents at the barrier's edge. Sure enough, they appeared together. The moment they arrived, they demanded the guardians hand over Mia. When the instructor refused, Christian's mother killed the elderly woman to demonstrate her ruthlessness, using Sonia as leverage. The instructor had no choice but to let the monk use a key to temporarily close the magical barrier and send out Mia. Christian's parents kept their promise and returned Sonia, but to Christian's surprise, once the exchange was over, they seemed ready to leave immediately, with no interest in discussing anything with him. As Christian started to break down, his mother finally confessed that they hadn't come for Mia at all. At that moment, the instructor escorting the barrier key was attacked by a monk and severely wounded. The monk immediately used the key to close the barrier on the other side, allowing the Strigoi to enter the capital without obstruction. Christian then realized that he had been manipulated by his parents. In a fit of rage, he unleashed a fiery attack, burning his father to death. His mother, devastated by grief, vowed to kill Lissa. Meanwhile, the capital descended into chaos. The vampires had no choice but to pack up and flee, while the monk who had led the disturbance calmly returned to a house. As expected, this monk was none other than Tatiana. Even more surprising, Lissa's brother, who was thought to be dead, was imprisoned there. It turned out that Tatiana had been targeting Lissa's brother from the beginning. After instructing Christian's parents to orchestrate the car accident, Lissa's brother had been captured. Tatiana had threatened him with Lissa's life, forcing him to help her ascend to the throne. It was because of the information Lissa's brother provided that St. Judah had been attacked. Now, Tatiana was focused on how to seize the throne immediately. Christian's mother, anxious to see results, demanded that Tatiana release Lissa's brother. This forced Tatiana to personally restrain her. Lissa's brother noticed that Tatiana's abilities were reminiscent of a half-vampire. What was even stranger was that Tatiana confessed she had no intention of ruling for long, but reluctantly Lissa's brother revealed that the voting process could be restarted if a council member were to die. Meanwhile, the Guardians were in full action, escorting the royal family to safety. The instructor, with his last breath, arrived at the prison and freed Dimitri and the teacher's sister, hoping they could assist in the battle. It was also at this moment that Christian learned of the theft of the barrier key. Realizing he was the root cause of the turmoil, he decided to resolve the situation and make amends. As for Rose, she had a vague sense that Lissa might be in danger, but knowing Dimitri was there to protect her, she didn't intend to turn back. Soren couldn't suppress his inner turmoil and revealed Dimitri's imprisonment. On the other side, Lissa and the Queen had taken refuge in the defensive stronghold. The Queen, even in such a dire situation, was able to enjoy food, but the one who fed her soon collapsed and died. The Guardians realized that she had been poisoned, leaving the Queen's life hanging in the balance. The next day, Rose and Soren rushed back to the capital, reuniting with May, Dimitri, and others. Since the Strigoi couldn't move in the daytime, they had to figure out a way to evacuate everyone before sunset. May suddenly remembered a tunnel near the capital that led to a helipad. However, she knew the Strigoi would likely be hiding there, resting. At this point, there was no choice but to take a desperate gamble, and Rose decided to clear the tunnel. Soren, knowing Dimitri had more combat experience, volunteered to have Dimitri accompany Rose, while he and the others would guard the entrance. Soon after, Rose and Dimitri reached the tunnel, and as expected, they started to argue. Fortunately, Rose's passive skill against the Strigoi allowed them to fight through the argument and still deal with the nearby Strigoi. However, the number of Strigoi far exceeded what they had expected. After a fierce battle, Dimitri was bitten by a Strigoi, leaving Rose overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. Just as the situation became critical, Rose's mother arrived in time to help her daughter and eliminate the remaining Strigoi. Meanwhile, in the archives, Christian found the High Priestess guarding the place. She told him that legendary figures had created the barrier keys for each province through a special infusion ritual. She had tried to replicate it but had failed, no matter whose blood, royal, monk, or legendary, she used. Christian instantly realized that the legendary figures must have used spiritual power for the infusion. Seeing Christian's sincerity, the High Priestess revealed an astonishing truth. It turned out that Christian's father had been terminally ill and had only a short time left to live. In order to stay with Christian's mother forever, they both became Strigoi. Now, the High Priestess handed the barrier key to Christian, asking him to help complete the infusion. As for Christian's mother, Lissa's brother had deliberately provoked her anger, hoping she would beat him, loosening his shackles. Once she left, Lissa's brother acted swiftly, finally regaining his freedom. In the defensive stronghold, Lissa tried to treat the poisoned queen, but it was to no avail. With Strigoi closing in, the queen urged Lissa to put on a cloak and escape, using the last of her strength to summon a fierce wind that killed the Strigoi, giving Lissa a chance to flee. Once on the streets, Lissa quickly encountered Sonia. As expected from a key strategist, Sonia immediately led Lissa to a crucial ally, Jesse, who could help them escape. Jesse, however, had been oblivious to the chaos outside, caught up in his own world, and had only just decided to drive out of the capital. Meanwhile, the news of the Queen's death reached the council. Before the higher-ups could react, a Strigoi burst in, wreaking havoc. As expected, all of this was part of Tatiana's plan. In his panicked escape, Jesse's father encountered Jesse and his group. He immediately demanded that the dirty blood courtesan get out of the car and make room for him, only to be flatly rejected by Jesse, who walked off, leaving his poor father to become a meal for the Strigoi. During their escape, Lissa saw the panicked masses and, feeling compassion, decided to stay behind and protect her people. Sonia chose to stay with Lissa, and she stopped running, using her powers to heal the injured. However, her energy soon ran low, and just when things seemed hopeless, Lissa's brother suddenly appeared before her. At first, Lissa thought it was an illusion, but when Sonia called out her brother's name, she realized he was truly alive. Unfortunately, their reunion was short-lived. Lissa's brother, about to reveal that Tatiana had hidden his true identity and had given Lissa something important, was attacked by Christian's mother. Rose sensed this and immediately reacted, but Lissa could only watch as her brother was turned into a Strigoi by Christian's mother. Christian, arriving just in time, hesitated and failed to kill his mother. The group had no choice but to head toward the barrier. After reaching a safe location, Christian asked Lissa to perform the infusion on the key, but Lissa was too drained to use her powers. Just then, Rose arrived just in time, though the sun was setting. The Guardians quickly assumed defensive positions to prepare for the incoming Strigoi. Lissa seized the opportunity to absorb Rose's spiritual light and completed the infusion. Once the spell was done, Rose told Dimitri to take the unconscious Lissa away, while Christian used the key to move through the battlefield. With the help of others, Christian successfully used the key to restart the barrier, finally quelling the chaos. Unfortunately, Soren was injured in the fight, and Sonia reminded Rose that she needed to escort Lissa out of the capital. With a heavy heart, Rose tearfully left. In the capital, Victor, alone in the church, met with Mia. He made no attempt to resist and allowed Mia to attack him. Meanwhile, Tatiana had successfully manipulated the council to carry out the vote and was officially crowned queen. She announced that Lissa had poisoned the old queen and issued a nationwide arrest warrant. The next day, Lissa, having regained consciousness, prepared to flee with Rose. Christian, now the head of the family after his aunt's death, had to stay in the capital. Dimitri, duty-bound, could not leave either. Before they parted ways, Rose was left with her father's phone number in case of emergency, and so Lissa and Rose drove off together, heading for the human world. And that's how the season ended. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.